You think those are real? The cop's sneer cut through the morning air as he dropped her bronze star onto the concrete. What he didn't know, the woman standing before him controlled $50 million in federal funding. The woman he was about to handcuff had commanded troops in 3 war zones, and in exactly 14 minutes, his entire career would detonate. But before we reveal how one traffic stop ignited a national firestorm, subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story of justice travels. Because what happens next, nobody saw it coming. Ma'am, hands where I can see them. The gun was already half drawn. Frances Turner's fingers stayed steady on the wheel. Her daughter's graduation invitation sat in the passenger seat. Harvard Law School, printed across the top in gold letters. 23 years of sacrifice leading to one ceremony, one weekend, and now this. Officer, why did you... Hands on the wheel, Officer Derek Kane's voice cracked. Behind him, blue lights painted the wealthy neighborhood in strobing accusations. 8:40 a.m., a Tuesday, the kind of morning that should have been ordinary. Frances complied. May I ask the reason for this stop? License and registration, now. They're in my glove compartment. Slowly. She reached. Smooth, controlled. Her military ID came out with the registration, the one that read Colonel in bold letters. Kane barely looked. Step out of the vehicle. Officer, I'm a military officer heading to... I don't care who you are, out. Frances opened the door. When she stood 5'9" uniform posture, 25 years of command, in every movement, something flickered across Kane's face, then vanished. Turn around, hands on the car. State the reason for this stop. Suspicious vehicle, don't make this hard. There it was, suspicious. Frances knew what he'd seen. Not a decorated colonel, not a Pentagon liaison, not a woman who'd earned every stripe, just a black woman in her late husband's BMW. The car Marcus bought her 2 weeks before Kandahar. The car he never came home to see her drive. Officer, I have identification showing. I said hands on the car. Frances turned. Placed her palms on the hood. The metal was still warm from her morning drive. Sirens approached. 2 units, then 3. 4 more officers, all young. All watching Kane like he was running the show. Davis checked the trunk. Rodriguez photographed the VIN. Michaels run the plates. I want to know if this is stolen. It's not stolen. I'll determine that. The way he said it made every word an accusation. Davis popped the trunk. Kane moved to supervise. Rodriguez stayed close to Frances, eyes darting between her and his superior. How long have you been on the force? Frances asked quietly. Rodriguez jumped. Ma'am? Simple question. 18 months. You know this stop is illegal. His face went pale. Ma'am? You know it, but you're standing here doing nothing. She kept her voice level, matter of fact. Is this the officer you wanted to be? Officer Kane has more experience. Experience violating rights. Rodriguez's hand moved toward his radio, then stopped. The moment crystallized. The choice made. Silence. Well, look at this! Kane's shout cut through everything. He held up a garment bag from the trunk, unzipping it with theatrical slowness. Frances's dress uniform. Medals aligned, ribbons perfect. The work of someone who understood that military bearing wasn't just physical, it was everything. Kane pulled it out roughly. Costume clothes. He laughed, sharp, ugly. Let me guess, bought this at a surplus store, use it for free meals. Heat flared in Frances's chest. Return my property. You're not ordering anything. He shook the jacket. Metals jangled. You know what I think? I think you're running a scam. Thank you for your service and all that garbage. Even the other officers shifted uncomfortably. That uniform represents 25 years. Kane grabbed the Bronze Star, the one from Kandahar, the one that came with words like extraordinary heroism on the citation. These are fake. He yanked it off. The pin ripped through fabric. Then he dropped it. The Bronze Star hit concrete with a small metallic sound. Frances went still. Not frozen. Not scared. Still like a predator deciding whether to strike. Pick it up. Her voice could have cut steel. Kane smiled. Or what? Or you'll regret it for the rest of your very short career. That's it. You're under arrest. Kane's hand went to his gun. Threatening an officer? Turn around. Hands behind your back. Frances looked at each officer. Memorized faces, badge numbers. Who stood where? Who said nothing? Then she turned and extended her hands. The cuffs clicked shut. Officer Kane, she said as he led her toward his cruiser, you just made the biggest mistake of your life. Yeah, they all say that. No, most people you do this to don't have the Joint Chiefs on speed dial. Most people you violate don't control $50 million in federal police funding. Most people aren't the Pentagon's direct liaison to law enforcement oversight. Kane's grip loosened. You're bluffing. My authorization code is Wolverine 6. That's Pentagon-level designation. 14 people in the entire U.S. military have that clearance. She turned her head, made eye contact. In 30 seconds, I'm activating it. Every decision you made in the last 10 minutes gets reviewed by federal investigators, military command, and congressional oversight. Color drained from Kane's face. You expect me to believe? I expect you to do your job. Instead, you profiled me, searched without cause, destroyed my property, mocked my service. Now, kid, you're arresting me with zero legal justification. Her eyes bored into him. I don't expect you to believe anything. I expect you to face consequences. Kane, maybe we should, Rodriguez started. She's lying, but Kane's voice wavered. It's a bluff. Francis smiled. Not kind, not warm. Officer Rodriguez badge number. Don't answer, Kane snapped. 3891. The number tumbled out. Officer Davis. 2203. Davis sounded sick. Officer Michaels. Silence. 4776. Michaels whispered. Thank you. Francis paused. Officer Kane, you have one choice. Remove these cuffs. Return my property. Let me leave. Your career might survive. She waited. Or take me to your station, process me. Either way, what happens next is inevitable. But I'm giving you one chance. For 3 seconds, Kane wavered. Then pride surged back. Get in the car. When your Pentagon contacts turn out to be garbage, when you're facing charges for false reports and threatening an officer, remember this moment. You could have cooperated. Francis let him push her into the cruiser. Through the window, she watched Davis carefully place her Bronze Star and uniform back in the trunk. At least someone had a shred of decency. Kane slid into the driver's seat. Francis closed her eyes. She'd only done this twice in 25 years. She activated her emergency authorization. The words came quiet. Steady. Final, this is Wolverine 6. Civilian detention unauthorized. Location, Maplewood Heights, Pinecrest Subdivision. Badge 2847, requesting immediate federal response. Authorization code Delta 7 Alpha November Tango. Kane's eyes shot to the rearview mirror. What did you... I told you exactly what I'd do. His radio crackled. His cell phone started ringing. The car's computer lit up with incoming priority messages. Francis watched with the calm of someone who'd survived worse. Ambushes in Kandahar had been louder, but not more satisfying than this. What? Kane grabbed his phone. Washington, D.C. area code. Pentagon prefix. What did you do? I made a phone call, the kind used when service members are in immediate danger. She leaned forward. Right now, I'm in danger of having my constitutional rights violated, of being falsely imprisoned, of being profiled and humiliated by someone who swore an oath to protect and serve. Kane's phone rang again. Different number, his personal cell. That's your captain, Francis said, wondering why a Pentagon emergency code just flagged your badge in the federal database. The drive took 12 minutes. Kane didn't answer his phones. Neither did the others in their vehicles. They all knew something had shifted. The easy arrest had become something else, something terminal. When they pulled into the precinct, Francis noted 3 things. Captain Mitchell stood on the steps, looking 10 years older. A dark sedan with government plates had just pulled in. Kane's hands were shaking. Last chance, Francis said. Uncuff me, apologize, walk away, your career might survive. Kane's jaw clenched. He got out, opened her door. Process her. Full booking. Kane, I don't think the desk sergeant started. I said process her. So they did. Fingerprints, mugshot, personal property inventory. Francis remained calm. Cooperative, professional. She noted every procedure, every violation, every officer who watched in silence. She was being led to a holding cell when the front doors burst open. 3 people in dark suits. 2 with briefcases stamped with Department of Defense seals. 1 with a phone pressed to her ear. Stop. The woman held up a badge. Department of Defense Office of Inspector General. Cease all processing immediately. Release Colonel Francis Turner into our custody, now. The desk sergeant froze. We have orders? Your orders are rescinded. Colonel Turner is a federal employee under Pentagon authority. This detention violates Title 10 U.S. Code Section 134. Release her. Kane appeared from the hallway. Hold on. Officer Derek Kane, badge 2847. Yes. Surrender your weapon and badge. You're suspended pending federal investigation into civil rights violations, illegal detention, and deprivation of rights under color of law. The FBI has been notified. Do not leave the jurisdiction." The precinct went silent. Captain Mitchell pushed through. "I'm commanding officer here. By whose authority? Pentagon, Department of Justice, and 37 members of Congress informed in the last 15 minutes that a military colonel with active security clearance was illegally detained by your department." The investigator pulled out a tablet. Colonel Turner documented every violation. Her testimony is being transcribed. Body camera footage from all officers has been remotely accessed and secured, and in 4 minutes this precinct will be swarming with federal agents executing search warrants for all records related to this incident and any similar stops made by Officer Kane in the last 5 years. Mitchell's face went gray. "This has to be a mistake." "The only mistake was made by your officer when he profiled a decorated veteran based on skin color and an expensive car." The investigator stepped closer. "The Bronze Star he threw on the ground, Colonel Turner earned that dragging 3 wounded soldiers to safety under direct enemy fire. The uniform he mocked, she wore it negotiating hostage releases in 4 countries. The woman he handcuffed, she advises the Joint Chiefs on civilian law enforcement and controls more federal police funding than anyone in this state." She turned to Francis. "Colonel Turner, who has the key to these cuffs?" Kane stepped forward. His hands shook as he unlocked them. Francis rubbed her wrists, slowly, deliberately. Then she looked at Kane. Really looked. Not with anger, not with triumph, with disappointment. "Officer Kane, you saw a black woman in an expensive car and decided she must be a criminal. You didn't see a public servant, a mother, a widow." She paused. "My husband bought that BMW 2 weeks before his final deployment. He never came home to see me drive it. You treated his memory and my service like garbage." Her voice stayed level, but something in it made Rodriguez step back. "That's not law enforcement. That's oppression with a badge." Kane opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Francis turned to Mitchell. "I want written statements from every officer who participated or witnessed this stop, within 24 hours. I want all body camera footage preserved. I want a complete audit of Officer Kane's arrest record with focus on racial demographics. And I want a formal written apology from this department delivered to my Pentagon office by close of business Monday. Colonel Turner will conduct a thorough..." "Captain, you misunderstand. I'm not asking, I'm informing." She stepped closer. "As of this moment, your department's federal funding is frozen. Your access to national databases is suspended. Your joint training operations with Fort Belvoir are canceled. And if I find a pattern of discrimination, every federal dollar you receive evaporates." She picked up her personal belongings from the property desk. Phone, keys, wallet, all handled like they'd been contaminated. "I'm going to base now. I have an inspection to conduct." She nodded to the DoD investigators. "Send me preliminary reports by 1700. "Yes, ma'am." Francis Turner walked out. Head high, spine straight. Behind her chaos. Panicked officers, a ruined career, a captain making desperate calls, and one Bronze Star that Davis had carefully cleaned and placed in an evidence bag marked Colonel's property handle with respect. But that wasn't the ending. That was the spark. Because 6 hours later, when Kane's body camera footage leaked to the press, when the entire internet watched him drop that Bronze Star mock, that uniform handcuff that decorated Colonel, the whole country exploded. And Officer Derek Kane, he had no idea that his 14 minutes of power would cost him everything. But Colonel Francis Turner knew. She'd counted every single second. The body cam footage hit Twitter at 2:47 p.m. By 3:15, it had 17 million views. Francis was in the middle of her Fort Belvoir inspection when her phone started vibrating. Not ringing. Vibrating continuously like a live wire. "Colonel Turner, you need to see this." Major Chen held up his tablet. His face was tight. The video played. Kane's camera angle. Crystal clear audio. Every word. Every action. The Bronze Star hitting the pavement in slow motion as someone had already edited it for maximum impact. "Ma'am, it's everywhere. CNN, Fox, MSNBC. The hashtag is by what hashtag? Justice for Colonel. It's the #1 trend in the United States." Francis stared at the screen. Watched herself being handcuffed. Watched Kane mock her uniform. Watched the moment she said Wolverine 6 and everything changed. "How many views?" 20 million now, and climbing. Her phone rang. Private number. "Colonel Turner?" "Francis, it's General Morrison." The chairman of the Joint Chiefs. His voice was granite. "I'm looking at footage of one of my colonels being treated like a criminal. Tell me everything." She did. 3 minutes? Factual? Precise. Silence on the other end. Then, I'm convening an emergency meeting with the Attorney General. This goes beyond one bad cop. This is a systemic failure. How many departments are we funding that operate like this? Sir, with respect, that's exactly what I intend to find out. Good, because as of now, you have full authority to audit every federal-funded law enforcement agency in the country. I want a report in 30 days. And Francis? Sir? I'm sorry this happened to you, but I'm not sorry about what you're going to do next. The line went dead. Major Chen was still holding the tablet. The view count had hit 30 million. Colonel, there's more. People are coming forward. Other victims. They're using the hashtag to share their own stories about that police department. Francis took the tablet, scrolled through the posts. A black doctor. Stopped 3 times in 6 months. Same neighborhood. A Hispanic attorney. Handcuffed in front of his children during a routine traffic stop. An Asian businessman. Car searched without consent. Nothing found. No apology given. 12 stories. Then 20. Then 50. All in the last 2 hours. Get me everything, Francis said. Every complaint filed against that department in the last decade. Every lawsuit settled quietly. Every internal affairs report that went nowhere. I want names, dates, and patterns. Yes, ma'am. Her phone rang again. This time she recognized the number. Mom? Baby? Her daughter's voice cracked. Mom, I just saw... I can't believe... Are you okay? I'm fine, Zoe. Fine, Mom. That cop threw your Bronze Star on the ground. He handcuffed you like... Zoe's voice broke. Like you were nothing. Like everything you've done, everything you've sacrificed meant nothing. Francis felt something tight in her chest loosen. I'm okay, really. No, you're not. And that's okay. You don't have to be strong right now. Zoe. Dad's car, Mom. He put you in handcuffs in Dad's car. Zoe was crying now, full sobs. That was the last gift he gave you. The last thing he picked out before... I know, baby, I know. What are you going to do? Francis looked at the tablet, at the view counter spinning upward, at the comments flooding in, thousands of them, people angry, people sharing their own stories, people demanding change. I'm going to make sure this never happens to anyone else. Good. Burn it all down, Mom, every bit of it. After they hung up, Francis stood in the hallway of Fort Belvoir's administrative building and let herself feel it. The rage, the humiliation, the violation. Then she locked it away in the same mental box she'd used for 25 years. And she went to work. By 6 p.m., the Pinecrest Police Department was drowning. Captain Mitchell's phone hadn't stopped ringing in 3 hours. News crews surrounded the building. Protesters had already gathered outside with signs reading Fire Kane and Justice for the Colonel. Inside the conference room looked like a war zone. We need to get ahead of this, the department's lawyer was saying. His name was Simmons. He looked like he'd aged a decade since morning. Issue a statement, apologize, distance ourselves from Kane. We suspended him, Mitchell snapped. What more do they want? His head, Simmons shot back. They want accountability, and frankly, Captain, they're going to get it whether we cooperate or not. The DOJ just announced a federal investigation. The FBI is requesting all our files. Congressional oversight committees are scheduling hearings. Rodriguez sat in the corner, ashen-faced. It's not just Kane. They're looking at all of us, everyone who was there. You followed orders, Mitchell said. I watched a decorated colonel get humiliated and did nothing. Rodriguez's voice was hollow. I knew it was wrong. She told me it was wrong, and I just stood there. You were a rookie following protocol. There's no protocol for this, Fred. Rodriguez stood. There's no protocol for treating people like criminals because of their skin color. There's no protocol for destroying someone's property and mocking their service, and if there was, then the protocol is broken. The room went silent. Simmons pulled up his laptop. It gets worse. Someone compiled a database. Every stop Kane made in the last 5 years. 732 total. 641 were people of color. Of those, 412 resulted in searches. 63 resulted in arrests. And guess how many of those arrests led to actual convictions? How many? 9. Mitchell's face went gray. That's a 15%? Conviction rate. Yes, compared to the department average of 72%, which means Kane was stopping people without cause, searching without probable cause, and arresting without evidence for years, and nobody caught it. We run regular reviews. Your reviews are garbage, and now the whole country knows it. Mitchell's phone buzzed. He looked at it and went pale. "What?" Simmons asked. "The mayor. She wants my resignation. By end of business today." Outside, the crowd was growing. News helicopters circled overhead. A CNN truck had parked directly in front of the main entrance. And inside his apartment across town, Derek Kane watched his life disintegrate in real time. The footage was everywhere. His face, his voice, his actions. His social media was gone. Locked or deleted by friends trying to protect him. Too late. Screenshots lived forever. His phone buzzed. Another unknown number. He'd stopped answering hours ago. His fiancée had called once. Told him not to come home. Told him she'd pack his things and leave them with his mother. Told him she couldn't marry someone who'd do what he did. Then she'd hung up. He'd lost count of the death threats. Thousands of them. Creative ones. Specific ones. Some included his home address. The news was calling him the face of police brutality. Twitter had a dozen hashtags about him. None of them good. His police academy graduation photo kept appearing with the caption, "This is who they give badges to." Someone had started a Change.org petition demanding his prosecution. It had 400,000 signatures and climbing. Kane poured another drink. His fourth, or fifth. The TV was on. Muted. But he could see the footage playing again. And again. And again. His own body camera. His own words. His own actions. No context would save him. No explanation would work. Because the truth was simple and ugly, he'd seen a black woman in an expensive car and assumed she was a criminal. And he'd been catastrophically wrong. His phone rang. His mother. He answered, "Derek, what have you done?" She was crying. "They're calling me, coming to the house. I had to disconnect the landline. Your sister says she's getting harassed at work. Your father won't even talk about it. He just sits there watching the news with his head in his hands." "Mom, you threw a medal on the ground. You handcuffed a colonel, someone who served this country longer than you've been alive. I didn't know." "You didn't care. That's the problem. You saw what you wanted to see and you treated her like trash." Her voice hardened. "I raised you better than this. I raised you to respect people, to see people as people. What happened to you?" "I was doing my job." "No, you were doing something else, something ugly, and now everyone can see it." She paused. "Your lawyer called me. He says there's going to be federal charges, civil rights violations. He says you could go to prison." Kane's hand tightened on the glass. "How much is this going to cost us?" his mother asked quietly. "I don't know." "We're going to lose the house, aren't we? Your father's retirement, everything we saved, it's all going to legal fees." "Mom, I hope it was worth it, Derek. I hope that one traffic stop was worth destroying your entire family." She hung up. Kane sat in the darkness and drained his glass. On the muted TV, Francis Turner's official Pentagon photo appeared. Full dress uniform. Medals? Ribbons? The caption read, "Colonel Francis Turner, 25 years of service. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Legion of Merit." Under that, how many others has this department failed? By 9 p.m., the story had gone international. BBC, Al Jazeera, Reuters, Deutsche Welle. American military officer detained by police, played in 16 languages. Francis was back at her Pentagon office when her assistant buzzed. "Colonel, you have approximately 63 interview requests, everyone from 60 Minutes to the New York Times. What should I tell them?" "Nothing yet." "Ma'am, with respect, you could control the narrative. Get your side out there before—" "My side is in the body camera footage. It's in the federal investigation. It's in the reforms I'm going to implement." Francis didn't look up from her computer. "I don't need to give interviews. I need to do my job." "Yes, ma'am." But an hour later, her phone rang. Private number again. "Colonel Turner, this is Senator Patricia Chen from the Oversight Committee. We're convening emergency hearings on federal law enforcement funding and accountability. We'd like you to testify." "When?" "Friday. I know that's short notice, but the public is demanding answers. And frankly, you're the only person who can provide them with credibility and authority." Francis pulled up her calendar. Zoe's graduation was Saturday. "I'll be there, but I need something in return." "Name it." "Full subpoena power, access to every federal-funded department's records, and a guarantee that whatever reforms I recommend will be fast-tracked through committee." Silence. "Then, you have it, all of it. Colonel, we've been trying to pass police reform for a decade. We've failed every time. But what happened to you, that changed something. People are paying attention. This might be our only chance." Then don't waste it. We won't. See you Friday. Thursday morning, Cain was formally charged. Federal courthouse, media circus outside. He arrived in a baseball cap and sunglasses. Didn't work. The crowd recognized him immediately. Justice for the Colonel? Lock him up. How many others did you abuse? His lawyer hustled him through a side entrance. Inside, the charges were read: deprivation of rights under color of law, false arrest, destruction of property, federal civil rights violations, maximum sentence 35 years. Bail was set at $250,000. Cain's mother mortgaged the house. Outside, a reporter grabbed Rodriguez as he arrived to testify before the grand jury. Officer Rodriguez, do you regret not stopping Officer Cain? Rodriguez stopped, looked directly at the camera. Every second of every day, I knew it was wrong. Colonel Turner told me it was wrong, and I did nothing. His voice cracked. I betrayed my oath. I betrayed that woman's trust. And I betrayed everything I thought I believed in when I became a cop. Will you testify against Cain? I'll testify to the truth, whatever that means for me. He paused. I'm also resigning from the force. I don't deserve to wear this uniform after what I did or didn't do. The clip went viral within an hour. Officer breaks ranks. I knew it was wrong, read the headlines. And in the comment sections, thousands of people shared their own stories about staying silent, about knowing something was wrong and doing nothing, about the cost of cowardice. By Thursday afternoon, 4 more officers from Cain's department had resigned. By evening, 12 officers from other departments across the country had come forward with stories about colleagues who operated like Cain, who profiled, who abused, who hid behind badges while violating the very laws they swore to uphold. The floodgates were opening. Frances saw all of it from her Pentagon office. She'd barely slept in 3 days, coffee and adrenaline keeping her functional as she compiled her report. Major Chen knocked. Colonel, you should see this. Another video, but not from Pinecrest. This one was from Chicago. A black teenager stopped for walking suspiciously, searched without cause, humiliated in front of his friends. The officer's body cam showed everything. Posted an hour ago, Chen said. It's already got 10 million views. They're using your hashtag, saying if a colonel can't get justice, what chance do they have? Frances watched the video, saw the fear in the kid's eyes, the helplessness. How old is he? 16, the same age Zoe had been when Marcus died, when Frances had explained that Daddy wasn't coming home, that he'd given everything for his country. Now that country was failing its own citizens. Get me his name, Frances said, and his family's contact information. I want to talk to them. Ma'am? If we're going to reform this system, we need to hear from the people it's failed, not just me, all of them. She turned to Chen. Start compiling a list. Every story that's come out in the last week, every victim who's willing to speak, every family who's been destroyed by police misconduct. That's going to be thousands of people. Then we'll need a bigger database. Chen nodded and left. Frances stood at her window overlooking the Pentagon's center courtyard. Somewhere out there, Derek Cain was probably drowning in regret. His captain was probably updating his resume, and the entire system that had enabled them was probably scrambling to cover its tracks. But scrambling wouldn't be enough, because Frances Turner hadn't spent 25 years in the military to let this moment pass, hadn't survived deployments and ambushes and the death of her husband to watch injustice continue unchallenged. She'd counted every second of those 14 minutes. Now she was going to make every single second count. Her phone buzzed. Text from Zoe. Mom, I'm so proud of you. Give them hell. Frances smiled. She fully intended to. Friday arrived with the weight of history behind it. The Senate hearing room was packed, every seat filled, cameras everywhere, the gallery overflowing with people who'd lined up since dawn for a chance to witness this. Frances sat at the witness table in her full dress uniform. Every medal, every ribbon, the Bronze Star that Davis had carefully cleaned, now pinned exactly where it belonged. Senator Chen gavelled the hearing to order. Colonel Frances Turner, thank you for being here. This committee recognizes your 25 years of distinguished service and apologizes for what happened to you. No American, let alone a decorated military officer, should ever be treated the way you were treated. Thank you, Senator. Colonel, in your professional opinion, what happened on Tuesday morning? Frances leaned forward. What happened was the predictable result of a system that prioritizes enforcement over justice, that values compliance over constitutional rights, that trains officers to see threats instead of citizens. She paused. Officer Cain didn't wake up Tuesday morning and suddenly become a bad cop. He was trained by a department that rewarded aggressive policing, supervised by commanders who ignored red flags, protected by a system that makes it nearly impossible to hold officers accountable. You've reviewed Officer Kane's record. I have. 732 stops in 5 years, 88% targeting people of color in a district that's 42% white, 412 searches without probable cause, 63 arrests with only 9 convictions, and 0 disciplinary actions despite 17 formal complaints. The room erupted in murmurs. Senator Chen waited for silence. How is that possible? Because the system protects itself, because departments investigate themselves, because unions shield bad officers, because qualified immunity prevents accountability, because federal funding comes with no strings attached and no oversight. Francis's voice hardened. We've spent $50 million training that department over the last decade. We paid for their equipment, their technology, their programs, and in return we got Officer Kane throwing my Bronze Star on the ground. What do you recommend? Complete overhaul, federal standards for hiring, training, and discipline, mandatory bias training with annual recertification, independent oversight boards with subpoena power, body camera requirements with public access, database tracking of officer misconduct across departments, and most importantly, conditional funding. Explain that? Every federal dollar comes with requirements. Meet the standards, keep the funding. Fail to meet them, lose it. Simple. A senator from the opposing party leaned into his microphone. Colonel Turner, some would say you're using one bad incident to paint all law enforcement with a broad brush. The vast majority of officers serve honorably. Francis met his eyes. Senator, I agree. Most officers are good people trying to do an impossible job, but good officers are destroyed by bad systems. When Officer Rodriguez watched Kane violate my rights and stayed silent, that wasn't because he's a bad person. It's because the system punishes officers who speak up and protects those who don't. She paused. We don't honor good cops by defending bad ones. We honor them by giving them the tools, training, and support they need to serve with dignity and accountability. The room went silent. Senator Chen looked at her notes. Colonel, you control federal funding for law enforcement. What actions have you taken? As of DO 800 this morning, I've frozen funding for 143 departments pending compliance audits. I've canceled joint training operations with 76 agencies, and I've requested full disclosure of complaint records, use of force data, and demographic arrest statistics from every federal-funded department in the country. That's unprecedented. So is handcuffing a colonel for driving while black. The hearing lasted 4 hours. Francis answered every question, provided every statistic, dismantled every objection. By the time it ended, 3 reform bills had been proposed. 12 departments had announced immediate policy changes, and 27 senators had pledged support for what was already being called the Turner Standards. Francis walked out of that hearing room knowing she'd started something that couldn't be stopped. The footage would air on every major network. The testimony would be quoted in every newspaper. And somewhere in America, another Derek Kane would watch and realize his days were numbered. Because the system that protected him, it was about to burn. Francis made it to Zoe's graduation with 40 minutes to spare. Harvard Law School. The ceremony started at 2. She'd landed at Logan Airport at noon, still wearing her dress uniform from the hearing medals catching sunlight as she rushed through the terminal. Zoe spotted her in the crowd, her face transformed. That smile. Marcus's smile. You came. I promised, didn't I? They held each other for a long moment. Francis felt her daughter trembling. Mom, I watched the whole hearing. Everyone did. They set up screens in the student center. When you said that thing about honoring good cops by not defending bad ones, the entire room erupted. Zoe pulled back, eyes wet. You were incredible. I was honest. That's why it was incredible. The ceremony was beautiful. 300 graduates, families cheering, futures beginning. And for 2 hours, Francis let herself forget about Kane and investigations and reform. She watched her daughter walk across that stage and accept her degree, and she thought about Marcus, how proud he'd be, how he'd sacrificed everything so moments like this could exist. Afterward, at the reception, Zoe introduced Francis to her friends. This is my mom, Colonel Francis Turner. The Colonel Turner. A young woman's eyes went wide. Oh my God, what you're doing is so important. My brother was stopped 17 times last year. 17. Never arrested, never charged. Just harassed for existing while black. Another student chimed in. My cousin got beat up during a traffic stop in Atlanta. Cops said he was resisting. He wasn't. We had his dash cam footage. Department still cleared them. More stories, more victims, more families destroyed. Frances listened to all of them, took names, contact information, added them to her growing database. When she finally got back to her hotel at midnight, her phone had 83 missed calls. The first message was from Major Chen. "Colonel, you need to call me, now." She did. "What happened?" Kane's lawyer filed a motion to dismiss. Claims you're conducting a personal vendetta, using your position to violate his rights. They're arguing selective prosecution and abuse of power. Frances went cold. On what grounds? They're saying you activated federal resources for a personal matter, that you leveraged your Pentagon position to destroy a local officer who was just doing his job. They're painting you as the aggressor. That's insane. It's strategy. They can't win on the facts, so they're attacking your credibility. And Colonel, it's working. Fox News ran a segment tonight. Military officer abuses power to target police. They had 3 retired cops on saying you're part of an anti-law enforcement agenda. Frances sat down hard. They're making me the villain. They're trying to. The lawyer's name is Marcus Hartley, big-time defense attorney, specializes in defending cops, never lost a case. He's good, Colonel, really good. Then we'll have to be better. But over the next week, Frances watched the narrative shift. Conservative media outlets ran constant coverage. Colonel's Crusade, they called it. Opinion pieces about military overreach. Talking heads questioning whether she'd exaggerated the encounter, whether Kane's actions were really that bad, whether this was all political theater. A counter hashtag emerged. Defend our police. Within 3 days, it had 2 million uses. Police unions across the country issued statements supporting Kane, calling Frances's reforms an attack on law enforcement, claiming her standards would make it impossible to do police work. She wants to defund the police, one union president said on CNN. She wants to strip officers of the tools they need to keep communities safe. And she's using her military position to push a radical agenda. Frances watched it all from her Pentagon office. Watched her testimony get twisted, her words taken out of context, her reforms characterized as extremist. "They're good, bum," she said to Major Chen. "I'll give them that." "Ma'am, some departments are refusing to comply with your audits. They're claiming federal overreach, constitutional violations. They've filed lawsuits." "Let them." "Colonel, there are 63 separate lawsuits now. Police unions in 40 states have joined. They're coordinating. This is organized resistance." Frances pulled up the latest court filing, read through the arguments. "They're scared," she said finally. "Ma'am, this isn't about defending Kane. It's about defending a system that protects them. If Kane goes down, if my reforms pass, they lose their shield. Qualified immunity, internal investigations, union protections, all of it gets exposed." She looked at Chen. "They're not fighting me, they're fighting accountability." "What do? We document everything, every lawsuit, every statement, every department that refuses to comply. Because when this goes to trial, when the evidence comes out, the American people are going to see exactly who these unions really protect." But the pressure was mounting. Anonymous threats arrived daily. Death threats, graphic ones. Her security detail had to be increased. Her office swept for devices. Her email filtered through multiple layers of protection. Someone leaked her home address. Protesters showed up outside, some supporting her, others calling her traitor. Race baiter, enemy of police. Zoe called panicked. "Mom, there are people outside our house. They're taking pictures. Someone spray-painted your car." "Are you safe?" "I'm at a friend's." "But Mom, this is getting crazy. Maybe you should back off. Let someone else handle this." "I can't do that." "Why not? You've made your point. You've started the conversation. Let the senators and lawyers take it from here." Frances looked at the photo on her desk. Marcus in uniform, smiling. 2 weeks before Kandahar. "Your father used to say something. If not us who, if not now, when. He believed that people who have power have responsibility, that seeing injustice and doing nothing makes you complicit." She paused. "I have power, Zoe, and I saw injustice. I can't walk away. Even if it destroys you." "Even then." Zoe was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Okay, but Mom?" "Be careful. These people play dirty." She had no idea how right she was. 2 days later, someone leaked Frances's personnel file. Every evaluation, every assignment, every disciplinary action, and there it was buried on page 47. A letter of counseling from 12 years ago. Minor insubordination. Failure to follow protocol during a training exercise. The headlines wrote themselves. Colonel Turner's troubled past. Military records show pattern of rule breaking. Did Frances Turner abuse authority before Kane's lawyer was all over the news? This woman has a history of believing rules don't apply to her. She violated military protocol 12 years ago. Now she's violating constitutional protections to pursue a personal vendetta. The pattern is clear. Frances watched the interview from her office, watched Hartley smile for the camera, watched him twist her entire career into a narrative of misconduct. Her phone rang. General Morrison. Frances, I just saw. It's a letter of counseling from 2013, sir. During a field exercise, I made a tactical decision that contradicted orders. Turned out to be the right decision. Saved 3 soldiers from a training accident, but technically I broke protocol. I remember that incident. You got a commendation 6 months later. Doesn't matter. They're using it to paint me as reckless, as someone who thinks they're above the rules. What do you need? Permission to release my full personnel file. All of it. Every commendation, every deployment, every evaluation that called me one of the finest officers in my class. If they want to talk about my record, let's show them the complete picture. You have it. I'll have JAG coordinate the release. But the damage was spreading. 3 senators who'd supported her reforms suddenly got quiet. 2 withdrew their sponsorship of the Turner Standards. 5 departments that had agreed to comply with audits now refused. The Washington Post ran a piece, "Has Colonel Turner gone too far?" Even supporters were wavering. Maybe she's too personally involved, one civil rights leader said on MSNBC. Maybe we need someone more objective to lead these reforms. Frances sat in her office at 11 p.m. reading the coverage. Major Chen had gone home hours ago. The building was empty except for security. Her computer pinged. Email from an unknown address. Subject line, "You should see this." She almost deleted it. Probably another threat. But something made her click. A video file. 19 minutes long. She hit play. Body camera footage. But not from Tuesday. This was older. Date stamp showed 3 years ago. Kane's camera. Traffic stop. Black man. 50s. Well-dressed. The interaction started normal. License and registration. Standard questions. Then Kane's voice changed. Got aggressive. "Step out of the vehicle." "Officer, what did I do?" "I said step out." The man complied. Kane searched him. Roughly, found nothing. Got more aggressive. "You got drugs in this car?" "No, sir." "Don't lie to me." "I'm not lying. I'm a school principal. I was just..." Kane wasn't listening. He was tearing through the car, glove compartment, under seats, trunk, nothing. "You got a smart mouth," Kane said. "You know that. Sir, I've been respectful. Turn around, hands behind your back." "For what? I haven't done anything." Resisting arrest? Obstruction. The man was handcuffed. Taken to the station. The footage ended. Frances sat back. Her hands were shaking. Another email arrived. Same address. "His name is Robert Chen, math teacher for 30 years, principal for 7, never been arrested, never been charged with anything until Kane decided he was suspicious. Charges were dropped? Department settled quietly. Robert never got justice. There are 17 more like him, all documented, all buried. Thought you should know." Frances forwarded the video to Major Chen, to the DOJ investigators, to Senator Chen's office, and then she replied to the anonymous sender. "Who are you?" 3 minutes later, "Someone who's been watching Kane for a long time. Someone who tried to stop him and got punished for it. Keep fighting, Colonel. Some of us are still on your side." The next morning, the video leaked. Frances didn't leak it, but someone did, and by noon, it had 15 million views. Robert Chen's story was everywhere. News crews found him. He gave an interview standing in front of his high school. "I thought I was going to die that day," he said, voice shaking. Officer Kane had his hand on his gun. I could see it in his eyes. He was looking for a reason. Any reason. He paused. "I have 3 children. I thought they were going to grow up without a father because I drove through the wrong neighborhood." More videos emerged. Different victims. Different encounters. All Kane. All following the same pattern. Profile. Escalate. Arrest. Drop charges. Hartley tried to spin it. These incidents were all investigated and cleared. Officer Kane was following department protocol. But the public wasn't buying it anymore. The counter hashtag collapsed. Defend Our Police became a punchline. The police unions went quiet, and suddenly senators were calling Frances again. "We want to move forward with the reforms. We need to pass the Turner Standards." "Can you testify again?" Frances could. And she did, but this time she brought Robert Chen with her, and Maria Rodriguez stopped 5 times in 2 years, and James Washington arrested in front of his kids, and 12 others, all of them with stories, all of them with evidence. The hearing room was silent as they testified, one after another, calm, dignified, devastating. When it was Frances's turn again, she didn't pull punches. "You asked me last week if I was using one bad incident to paint all law enforcement with a broad brush. Now you've heard from 14 people, 14 lives disrupted, 14 constitutional violations, 14 examples of what happens when we have systems without accountability." She leaned forward. "How many more stories do you need to hear? How many more videos need to surface? How many more families need to be destroyed before we admit we have a problem?" Senator Chen looked at her colleagues. "I think we've heard enough. We'll be voting on the Turner Standards next week." Frances left that hearing knowing she'd won, but winning came with costs. She'd been threatened, smeared, investigated. Her daughter had been harassed, her home vandalized, her career questioned, and Kane still hadn't gone to trial. His attorney was filing delay after delay, arguing that pretrial publicity made a fair trial impossible, that federal prosecutors were biased, that the jury pool was contaminated. "He's stalling," the prosecutor told Frances in a conference call, hoping public attention fades, hoping we'll offer a plea deal. "Will you?" "Not a chance. We're taking this to trial, and we're going to win." But trials took time. Months. Maybe a year. And in that time, Kane was out on bail, living in his mother's basement, working at a car wash, wearing his baseball cap and avoiding eye contact. Someone photographed him pumping gas. The image went viral. "Fallen officer," read the caption. Some people felt sorry for him. Most didn't. Frances saw the photo and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not pity, just exhaustion. She'd been running on adrenaline for 3 weeks, barely sleeping, living on coffee and determination. Her uniform felt heavier every day. Major Chen found her in her office at 2 a.m. "Colonel, you need to go home." "I'm fine." "No, you're not. You've been here 17 hours. You haven't eaten. You're running yourself into the ground." "There's too much work." "The work will be here tomorrow. You won't be if you don't take care of yourself." Chen sat down. "Ma'am, permission to speak freely?" "Always." "You're trying to save everyone. Every victim, every department, every officer who wants to do better, but you're one person. You can't carry all of this alone." Frances looked at the files covering her desk, hundreds of them, thousands of pages, each one representing someone failed by the system. "If I don't carry it, who will? A lot of people, ma'am. You've started something huge. The Turner Standards are going to pass. Departments are reforming. Officers are speaking out. You've changed the conversation." He paused. "But if you burn out, if you collapse, who wins? Not the victims, not the good cops, not the families. Only people like Kane." He was right. Frances knew he was right, but stopping felt like surrender. "Go home," Chen said gently. "Rest. See your daughter. Remember why you're doing this. Then come back and finish it." Frances gathered her things, walked through the empty Pentagon halls, got in her car, Marcus's car, and drove. She made it 3 blocks before she had to pull over. And then she cried. Really cried. For the first time since Tuesday morning. Since Kane had dropped that Bronze Star. Since her entire world had exploded into federal investigations and Senate hearings and death threats. She cried for Marcus, for Zoe, for Robert Chen and Maria Rodriguez, and every person who'd been violated by someone sworn to protect them. She cried for Rodriguez, who'd known it was wrong and stayed silent, for the good cops drowning in bad systems, for the families destroyed by misconduct, and she cried for herself, for the colonel who'd survived deployments and ambushes and widowhood only to be broken by 14 minutes in her own country. When she was done, she wiped her face, fixed her uniform, and drove home. Zoe was waiting, made tea, didn't ask questions, just sat with her mother in the quiet darkness of their kitchen. "I'm proud of you," Zoe said finally. "I haven't won yet." "Yes, you have. You've already won. Because a year from now, 5 years from now, police officers are going to be trained differently. They're going to be held accountable. And somewhere, some woman is going to get pulled over for no reason, and the cop is going to remember Colonel Francis Turner. He's going to think twice. He's going to do better." Zoe took her mother's hand. "That's winning, Mom. That's the victory that matters." Frances squeezed her daughter's hand. Marcus's eyes looking back at her. His courage, his conviction. "Your father would have liked you." Zoe smiled through tears. He did like me. For 7 whole years, I remember. They sat together until the sun rose. And when Frances went back to the Pentagon Monday morning, she went back different, not weaker, stronger, because now she understood something fundamental. This wasn't about revenge. Never had been. It was about making sure the next Frances Turner didn't need to activate Wolverine 6. The next Robert Chen didn't get handcuffed for being a principal while black. The next family didn't bury their father because a traffic stop escalated. The Turner standards passed the Senate 73-27. Bipartisan support, a genuine miracle. They mandated federal standards for every department receiving federal funding. Bias training, de-escalation training, constitutional policing, body cameras, independent oversight, misconduct databases, conditional funding. Everything Frances had asked for. The president signed it into law 3 weeks later. Frances stood behind him in the Oval Office. Full dress uniform. Bronze star pinned exactly where it belonged. This legislation represents the best of American values, the president said. Accountability, justice, equal protection under law, and it exists because one woman refused to be silent, because Colonel Frances Turner stood up and demanded better, for herself, for her fellow citizens, for the country she served with such distinction. Cameras flashed. Frances shook his hand, smiled for the photos, but her mind was elsewhere. On Kane's trial starting in 2 weeks, on the 143 departments still resisting audits, on the 1,000 stories still untold. The work wasn't finished. It was just beginning. That night, Frances sat in her home office reviewing trial prep with the prosecutors. They had everything. Body camera footage, witness testimony, expert analysis, Kane's history, the works. "We're going to destroy him," the lead prosecutor said. "His lawyer knows it. That's why they keep filing delays." "Don't get cocky," Frances warned. "Hartley's good. He'll try something." "What can he try? The evidence is overwhelming." "He'll make it about me, about federal overreach, about military interference in civilian matters. He'll paint Kane as a victim of my vendetta." She paused. "And some of the jury will believe him." "Not enough to acquit?" "Maybe not, but enough to hang a jury. Force a mistrial. Give Kane another chance." Frances closed the file. "We can't just win. We need to win decisively. No doubt, no question, complete accountability." The prosecutor nodded. "Then that's what we'll do." 2 weeks later, Derek Kane's trial began. The courthouse was surrounded. Media trucks. Protesters. Both sides. Signs and cameras and tension so thick you could taste it. Frances sat in the gallery. Front row. Every day. Full uniform. She wanted Kane to see her. Wanted him to remember exactly whose career he'd tried to destroy. Whose service he'd mocked. Whose dignity he'd violated. The prosecution opened strong. Showed the body cam footage. Played the audio. Walked through every violation. Every illegal action. Every moment of bias and aggression. Kane sat at the defense table looking smaller than he had that Tuesday morning. No swagger. No confidence. Just a 36-year-old man watching his life get dissected for the world to see. Hartley did exactly what Frances predicted. "Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't about justice. It's about power. Colonel Turner is a powerful woman with powerful connections. She used those connections to destroy a police officer who was doing his job. Was Officer Kane perfect? No. Did he make mistakes? Perhaps. But does he deserve to have his entire life destroyed because he stopped the wrong person?" Hartley gestured at Frances. "She sits in that courtroom every day, in full uniform, medals on display. Why? To intimidate you, to remind you of her power, to make sure you know that if you don't convict, you're opposing the military, the Pentagon, the federal government." Some jurors looked at Frances. She met their eyes calmly. Didn't flinch, didn't react. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Robert Chen testified. Maria Rodriguez, James Washington, all of them calm, professional, devastating. Rodriguez testified too, about watching it happen, about knowing it was wrong, about staying silent. "I'll regret it for the rest of my life," he said, voice breaking. "I had a chance to stop him, to do the right thing, and I didn't. I'm as guilty as he is." Then Frances testified. Hartley tried to rattle her, suggested she'd exaggerated, suggested she'd used her position improperly, suggested this was all comedy political theater. Frances answered every question with clinical precision. "Mr. Hartley, Officer Kane threw my bronze star on the ground. That's not my characterization. That's on video. He searched my car without probable cause. That's on video. He arrested me without legal justification. That's on video. You can spin the narrative however you want, but the evidence speaks for itself. You activated a Pentagon emergency code for a traffic stop. I activated it because I was being illegally detained and my constitutional rights were being violated. That's exactly what that code exists for. Service members in danger from illegal government action. You used your position to punish Officer Kane. I used my position to ensure accountability. There's a difference. If a decorated military officer can be profiled and abused, what chance does an ordinary citizen have? My position gave me resources. I used those resources to expose systemic failure. That's not punishment, that's oversight. Hartley tried again. Isn't it true you have a history of not following rules that you were disciplined for insubordination? I received a letter of counseling for making a tactical decision during a training exercise that contradicted orders. That decision saved 3 soldiers from injury. 6 months later, I was commended for it. So yes, I prioritize doing what's right over blindly following protocol, something Officer Kane should have considered. The courtroom rippled with reaction. The jury deliberated for 8 hours. When they came back, the forewoman stood. On the charge of deprivation of rights under color of law, how do you find Cook guilty? On the charge of false arrest, guilty. On the charge of federal civil rights violations, guilty. Every charge, guilty on all counts. Kane's face crumpled. His mother sobbed. Hartley's jaw tightened. And Frances Turner sat perfectly still, watching justice happen. Finally, sentencing came 2 weeks later. The judge was a black woman, 63 years old. Federal bench for 20 years. She looked at Kane for a long moment before speaking. Mr. Kane, you stood before this court and claimed you were just doing your job. But your job was to protect and serve. Instead, you profiled. You violated. You abused power. She paused. Colonel Turner served this country for 25 years, earned her rank, earned her medals, earned her respect. You treated her like a criminal because of the color of her skin. That's not law enforcement. That's oppression. And this court will not tolerate it. Kane was sentenced to 6 years federal prison, followed by 5 years probation, permanent ban from law enforcement, and restitution to all documented victims. He'd serve every day. No parole for federal crimes. When the marshal led him away, Kane looked back once. At Frances, she held his gaze. Didn't smile. Didn't gloat. Just watched him go. Outside, the media swarmed. Frances gave one statement. Justice was served today, but this isn't about one officer or one verdict. It's about changing a system that allowed this to happen. The Turner Standards are now federal law. Departments across this country are reforming, and the message is clear badge or no badge, nobody is above accountability. That night, Frances drove to Arlington Cemetery, found Marcus's grave, sat beside it in the fading light. We did it, she said softly. Your car, your sacrifice, it mattered, it all mattered. The wind rustled through the trees, and for the first time in a month, Frances Turner felt peace. But peace was temporary. It always was. The Turner Standards became law, but laws on paper meant nothing without enforcement. And enforcement meant walking into police departments that didn't want her there, auditing systems that had operated in darkness for decades, and facing officers who saw her as the enemy. Frances started with Pinecrest. The department where it all began. Captain Mitchell was gone. Forced retirement. The new captain was a woman named Sarah Brennan, 28 years on the force. Clean record. Reputation for fairness. She'd been brought in specifically to clean house. They met in the captain's office on a Monday morning. Brennan looked tired, like she'd aged 10 years in 2 months. Colonel Turner. She stood, extended her hand. I've been expecting you. Frances shook it. Firm grip, direct eye contact. Good signs. Captain Brennan, thank you for meeting with me. I didn't have much choice, did I? Federal mandate and all. But Brennan's tone wasn't hostile, just realistic. Coffee. Please. Brennan poured 2 cups, sat down. Let me save us both some time. I've read the Turner Standards, all 63 pages. I know what you want, complete overhaul, training, oversight, accountability, and I'm going to give it to you. Frances raised an eyebrow. Just like that. Just like that. You know why? Because what happened to you should never have happened. Kane was a problem for years. Everyone knew it. And nobody did anything because the system protected him. Well, I'm done protecting bad cops. I became a cop to help people. Somewhere along the way, departments like this has forgot that. She paused. So yes, just like that. Tell me what you need. Frances pulled out her tablet. I need access to every personnel file, every complaint, every use of force report, every disciplinary action, or lack thereof. I need your training curricula, your hiring practices, your promotion criteria, everything. You'll have it by end of business today. I need to interview your officers, individually, no union reps, no recording, just honest conversations about how they do their jobs and what needs to change. Brennan hesitated. The union won't like that. The union doesn't get a vote. Federal oversight supersedes union contracts. They can file all those grievances they want. Doesn't change the law. Fair enough. You'll have access to everyone. And I need you to fire 3 officers. Now Brennan went still. Which 3? Davis Michaels and every other officer who was present during my stop and did nothing. They watched Kane violate my rights. They participated in the illegal search. They stood by while he destroyed my property. That's complicity. That's a pattern. And I won't have them wearing badges. Davis is the one who saved your Bronze Star, who treated your uniform with respect. Davis is the one who waited until it was safe to show decency. That's not good enough. Being a good cop means stopping bad cops. He had the chance. He didn't take it. Brennan looked at her coffee. You're asking me to fire half my senior officers. I'm requiring it, as part of the compliance audit. Fire them or lose your federal funding. Your choice. That's not really a choice. No, it's not. But that's the point. For too long, departments have made the easy choice. Protect the badge. Circle the wagons. Defend the indefensible. That ends now. Brennan was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. I'll have the paperwork ready by Wednesday. Good. Now let's talk about hiring standards. They worked for 6 hours, going through every policy, every procedure, every systemic failure that had allowed Kane to operate unchecked. By the end, Brennan looked exhausted. This is going to take years, she said. Changing culture, changing attitudes, changing the way officers think about their jobs. Yes, but it starts today, and it starts here. Pinecrest is going to be the model. Every department in the country is watching. If you succeed, they'll follow. If you fail, they'll use it as evidence that reform doesn't work. No pressure then, Frances almost smiled. Welcome to accountability, Captain. But Pinecrest was the exception. Most departments fought back. The police union in Chicago filed a federal lawsuit, constitutional violation, government overreach, infringement on collective bargaining. They wanted the Turner Standard struck down. Let them sue, Frances told the DOJ lawyers. We'll win. It'll take time, maybe years. Then we fight for years. The law is clear. Federal funding comes with federal requirements, always has. We're just enforcing it. But the lawsuits kept coming. 17 states filed. 43 departments. 6 police unions, all coordinated, all arguing the same thing, that Frances was exceeding her authority. The conservative media had a field day. Military takeover of police, read one headline. Colonel Turner's power grab, read another. Talk radio hosts spent hours dissecting her radical agenda. Cable news panels debated whether she'd gone too far. One host called her the most dangerous person in America. Another said she was waging war on the men and women who keep us safe. A third suggested she should be court-martialed for conduct unbecoming. Frances watched it all, took notes, documented every attack, because she knew something they didn't. Public opinion was on her side. A national poll showed 73% support for the Turner Standards, 86% of black Americans, 68% of white Americans, even 54% of Republicans. People wanted accountability. They'd wanted it for years. She'd just given them a framework. But support didn't mean smooth implementation. She flew to Dallas to audit a department that had refused to comply. The chief was a man named Tom Bradley, 35 years on the force, old school, set in his ways. Their meeting lasted 4 minutes. I'm not doing it, Bradley said flatly. Your Turner Standards are garbage. You want to handcuff my officers? Make them second-guess every decision. Get them killed because they're afraid of being sued. I want them to follow the Constitution. They do follow the Constitution. Frances pulled up a file on her tablet. Your department has had 217 excessive force complaints in the last 3 years. 89 of them involved black citizens, despite your city being only 22% black. You've had 14 wrongful death lawsuits, 12 settled out of court, and your officers have killed 7 unarmed civilians in the last 18 months. Sometimes force is necessary. Not the kind of force that results in 7 dead citizens. Not the kind that disproportionately targets minorities. And not the kind that costs your city $43 million in settlements. She closed the tablet. You're not protecting your officers, Chief. You're enabling them. Get out of my office. I'm not leaving until you sign the compliance agreement. Then you'll be here a long time. Francis stood. Fine. As of this moment, your department's federal funding is frozen. All of it. Equipment grants, training funds, technology subsidies, drug task force money, everything. You want to operate without federal oversight, do it without federal dollars. Bradley's face went red. You can't do that. I can, I just did. And it stays frozen until you comply. So you can explain to your officers why their paychecks are bouncing. Explain to your mayor why city services are getting cut to make up the budget shortfall. Explain to the citizens why their police force just lost $7 million in funding. She headed for the door. Or you can sign the agreement and get your money back. Your choice. She walked out. Behind her, Bradley was already on the phone. Probably to his lawyer, or his union rep, or both. Didn't matter. The law was the law. And Francis had the authority to enforce it. But that night, someone slashed her rental car tires. The next morning, her hotel room was broken into. Nothing stolen. Just a message spray-painted on the bathroom mirror, go home. Her security detail was increased again. 2 agents instead of 1. Armed. Serious. Ma'am, we think you should consider canceling the rest of the audit tour, one agent said. The threats are escalating. No. Colonel, I said no. If I back down now, every department in the country will know that threats work. That intimidation works. I won't give them that victory. Ma'am, with respect, your safety. My safety is important, but what I'm doing is more important. Schedule the next audit. We're not stopping. But the threats kept coming. More targeted. More specific. Someone sent her a box with a dead rat and a note, rats die in dark places. Someone else sent photos of Zoe. At her apartment, at the gym, at the grocery store, with the caption, pretty daughter, would be a shame if something happened. Francis called Zoe immediately. I'm fine, Mom. I have security now, too. 2 guys. They follow me everywhere. It's annoying, but I get it. Baby, if you want to leave town for a while. Mom, stop. I'm not running. You're not running. We don't run from bullies. You taught me that. Francis felt her throat tighten. I'm sorry I dragged you into this. You didn't drag me. I walked in willingly. Proudly. Zoe paused. Mom, what you're doing matters. It matters more than someone spray painting threats. More than slashed tires. More than intimidation. Don't let them win. I won't. Promise. Promise. But keeping that promise was getting harder. The resistance was organized. Coordinated. Well-funded. Police unions across the country had pooled resources. Hired PR firms. Launched social media campaigns. Created websites attacking Francis personally. One site listed every decision she'd ever made in the military. Questioned her judgment. Suggested she had a history of overreach. Another site published her home address, her daughter's address, photos of both. A third site encouraged officers to refuse audits, provided legal templates, offered to pay for defense lawyers. Francis documented everything, sent it to the FBI, to the DOJ, to congressional oversight. This is organized obstruction, she told the Attorney General in a video call. This is conspiracy to violate federal law. I agree. We're opening investigations into the union leadership, financial crimes, conspiracy, the works. The AG paused. But Colonel, these investigations take time. Months, maybe years. Can you hold out that long? I don't have a choice. You do. You could step back. Let someone else take point. The Turner standards exist now. They don't need you to enforce them. Yes, they do. Because the moment I step back, this becomes about bureaucracy, paperwork, compliance audits that get filed and forgotten. It needs a face, a story, someone who won't back down. Francis met the AG's eyes through the camera. It needs to be personal, because for every victim of police misconduct, it is personal. The AG nodded. Then we'll back you, all the way, whatever you need. I need you to prosecute these union leaders. I need you to go after the departments that refuse to comply. And I need you to do it publicly. Make examples. Show that obstruction has consequences. Done. 3 weeks later, the DOJ indicted 5 union presidents. Conspiracy to obstruct federal law enforcement, witness intimidation, financial fraud. The conservative media exploded. Turner's Revenge read the headlines. Military officer declares war on police unions. But something shifted. Departments started complying. Quietly, without announcement, they'd sign the agreements, submit to audits, implement the standards. Not because they wanted to, because they had to, and because they'd seen what happened to those who didn't. Dallas Police Chief Bradley held out for 6 weeks. Then his mayor called him in. "Tom, we're done. The city can't afford to lose $7 million in funding. Sign the agreement." "Sir, if we give in to her demands, we're not giving in. We're following federal law. There's a difference. Sign it today, or I'll find a chief who will." Bradley signed. Frances got the notification at midnight. She was in her Pentagon office, still working, always working. Major Chen knocked. "Colonel, you should see this." Another email, another video. This one was from Los Angeles. Traffic stop. Black teenager, 17 years old. Officer pulled him over for suspicious behavior. Started to escalate, then stopped. The officer's voice on the body cam, "Sir, I need you to know that you haven't done anything wrong. I stopped you because I thought I saw something suspicious, but I was wrong. You're free to go, and I apologize for the inconvenience." The teenager looked shocked. Seriously, drive safe." The video ended. Chen looked at Frances. "Colonel, the officer submitted this himself, said he was about to escalate, about to search the car, about to do exactly what Kane did. Then he remembered your case, remembered the Turner standards, and he stopped himself." Frances watched the video again, saw the moment the officer chose differently. How many, she asked quietly. "How many what? How many videos like this?" Chen pulled up a file. 47 in the last month. Officers submitting body cam footage showing de-escalation, constitutional stops, respectful encounters. They're using the hashtag Turner Standards. They're proud of it. Frances felt something release in her chest, something that had been tight since that Tuesday morning. "Send thank you notes to every officer, personal ones, from me. Tell them they're what law enforcement should be, that they're the model." "Yes, ma'am?" But not everyone was changing. Some departments were getting worse. A department in Georgia fired 3 officers for reporting misconduct, said they'd violated the code. The union backed the department. Frances flew there personally. The fired officers met her at a coffee shop. All 3 were young. 2 men, 1 woman. All of them looked shell-shocked. "We did what the Turner standards required," one said. "His name was James, 24 years old. On the force for 18 months. We reported violations, we documented them, we followed procedure, and they fired us for it." "What were the violations?" "Our sergeant was planting evidence. We saw him do it twice, put drugs in someone's car during a search, then found them." James's hands shook. "We reported it through proper channels. Sergeant got a 30-day suspension. We got fired for conduct unbecoming and failure to maintain unit cohesion." Frances pulled out her phone, called the DOJ hotline. "This is Colonel Turner. I need a team in Atlanta. Police retaliation, whistleblower protection violations. I want the department investigated and the sergeant prosecuted. I want these officers reinstated with back pay, and I want it done this week." She hung up, looked at the 3 young officers. "You did the right thing, the hard thing, and I'm going to make sure you don't suffer for it." The woman officer spoke up. "Colonel, they're saying you're destroying police departments, that you're making it impossible to do the job, that crime is going to spike because officers are afraid to act." That's what they said about body cameras, too, that officers wouldn't be able to do their jobs if they knew they were being recorded. Crime went down, complaints went down, good policing went up. Frances leaned forward. "You know why, because accountability makes everyone better. Bad cops hate it. Good cops embrace it, and you 3 are proof that good cops exist." "But we're unemployed." "Not for long. I'll make some calls. Departments are desperate for officers who actually want to do the job right. You'll be hired within a month. Better departments, better pay, better leadership." She kept that promise. All 3 were hired by departments that had embraced the Turner standards. James ended up in Seattle. The woman officer went to Portland. The 3rd got recruited by the FBI. But the retaliation cases kept coming. Officers fired for reporting misconduct, demoted for testifying against colleagues, harassed for supporting reforms. The pushback was real and vicious. Frances created a whistleblower protection program, federal funding for officers who reported violations, legal defense funds, job placement assistance, witness protection when necessary. Within 2 months, the program had 300 applicants. "Colonel, we're not funded for this many cases," Major Chen said. Then we get more funding. Talk to Congress. Tell them we need an emergency appropriation. These officers are risking everything to do what's right. We're not abandoning them. Congress approved $10 million, then another $20 million. The program expanded, and slowly department cultures started shifting. Not everywhere, not quickly, but shifting. Francis saw it in the numbers. Excessive force complaints down 17% in departments that had implemented the standards. Officer-involved shootings down 23%. Community trust surveys up 38%. The data was working. The reforms were working. But Francis was exhausted. 6 months of constant travel, constant fighting, constant threats. She'd lost 15 pounds. Couldn't sleep without medication. Jumped at loud noises. Zoe noticed. "Mom, you look terrible." "Thanks." "I'm serious. You're running yourself into the ground. When's the last time you took a day off?" Francis couldn't remember. "That's what I thought. Mom, you need to rest. This isn't sustainable." "There's too much work. There will always be too much work. But if you collapse, who takes over? Who keeps this going?" Zoe grabbed her mother's hands. "You're not invincible. Stop pretending you are." That night, Francis lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Marcus, about the last conversation they'd had before his deployment. "Promise me something," he'd said. "If I don't come back, promise me you'll keep living. Not just existing, actually living." She'd promised. But was she living, or was she just fighting? The next morning, she called General Morrison. "Sir, I need to take leave, 2 weeks. I haven't taken any since this started, and I need to step back." Approved, effective immediately, and Francis, thank you for telling me. That took courage. She spent the first week with Zoe. No phones, no emails, no audits, just mother and daughter. They went to Boston, walked the Freedom Trail, ate too much seafood, laughed until they cried. The second week, Francis went to Kandahar. Not the city, the memorial at Arlington, the section where Marcus's unit was buried. 7 soldiers who didn't come home. She sat there for hours, talking to him, telling him about everything, about Kane, about the reforms, about the fight. "I miss you," she said finally. "Every day, but especially now. You'd know what to do. You always knew." The wind rustled through the trees, and Francis felt something she hadn't felt in months. Peace. When she returned to work, she had clarity. This wasn't about revenge, wasn't about Kane, wasn't even about her. It was about making sure Marcus's sacrifice meant something, that the country he died for was worth dying for, that justice wasn't just a word but a practice. She called a staff meeting. "We're changing strategy," she announced. "We've been fighting defensively, responding to resistance, forcing compliance. That's necessary but not sufficient. Now we go on offense." "Ma'am?" Major Chen looked confused. "We start highlighting success stories. Departments that have embraced reform and seen results. Officers who are doing incredible work under the new standards. Communities where trust has improved. We show the country what good policing looks like." She pulled up a presentation. "Every week we feature a department, showcase their work, celebrate their officers, make other departments want to be like them. Positive reinforcement instead of just punishment." "Exactly. Shame only goes so far. Pride goes further. Make good departments heroes. Make bad departments embarrassed to be left behind." The strategy worked. Francis started a YouTube channel. Featured departments every week. Showed body cam footage of de-escalation. Constitutional stops. Community engagement. Officers going above and beyond. The videos went viral. One showed an officer in Detroit talking a suicidal man off a bridge. Patient, compassionate, perfect de-escalation. Another showed officers in Phoenix organizing a youth basketball league. Building relationships. Changing perceptions. A third showed a traffic stop in Miami where the officer realized the driver was having a medical emergency and called an ambulance instead of issuing a ticket. "This is what the Turner Standards enable," Francis said in each video. "Officers doing their jobs with skill, compassion, and constitutional integrity. This is what law enforcement should be." The comments were overwhelmingly positive. Millions of views, thousands of shares, and departments started competing to be featured. "Colonel, we have 200 departments requesting to be showcased," Chen said. "They're sending us footage, success stories, community feedback. They want recognition." Francis smiled. For the first time in 6 months, she felt genuine hope. Give it to them. Feature as many as we can. Make this about celebration, not just correction. The narrative was shifting. Slowly, but shifting. By the 1-year anniversary of her stop, Frances had audited 473 departments. 308 were in full compliance. 142 were working toward it. 23 were still resisting. Officer Derek Kane had served 6 months of his sentence. He'd been attacked twice in prison. Once by inmates who'd seen the video. Once by guards who were veterans. He'd requested protective custody. It was denied. Captain Mitchell had disappeared. Moved to another state. Changed his name. Tried to start over. Rodriguez was working as a security guard, attending therapy, trying to forgive himself. And Frances Turner stood in the same spot where Kane had pulled her over 1 year ago. The street looked different now. The city had renamed it Constitutional Accountability Boulevard, put up a memorial marker. On this spot, Colonel Frances Turner was illegally detained, sparking a national movement for police reform and accountability. May we never forget that justice requires courage. She touched the marker, thought about that morning, about how terrified she'd been, how violated, how angry, and how it had all led to this, to change, to reform, to progress. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her. Colonel Turner? Colonel, this is Officer Sarah Martinez, Oakland PD. I just wanted to say thank you. For what? I've been on the force for 3 years. I've watched good cops leave because they couldn't stand the culture. I almost left myself. But the Turner standards gave me hope. Gave us all hope. Our department is different now. Better. And it's because you refused to stay silent. Her voice cracked. You changed everything. They talked for 20 minutes. About policing, about challenges, about the work still ahead. When Frances hung up, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Not in herself, in what was being built, in officers like Martinez who wanted to do better. The fight wasn't over, might never be over, but they were winning. One department at a time, one officer at a time, one community at a time. And Derek Kane's 14 minutes of power had become a catalyst for decades of change. Frances got in her car, Marcus's car, and drove toward whatever came next. Whatever came next arrived faster than Frances expected. She was halfway to the Pentagon when her phone rang again. This time it was Senator Chen. Colonel, we have a problem. The Supreme Court agreed to hear the union's challenge. They're questioning whether the federal government has the authority to mandate the Turner standards. Frances pulled over. When's oral arguments? 3 months. And Colonel, this is serious. If they rule against us, everything you've built collapses. Every reform, every standard, gone. Then we don't lose. It's the Supreme Court. We can't control. We can control the narrative. We can control public opinion. We can show the country what's at stake. Frances's mind was already racing. How many success stories do we have documented? Hundreds. Get me the best 50. Departments with measurable improvements. Officers who've prevented tragedies through de-escalation. Communities where trust has been rebuilt. I want data. I want testimony. I want proof that these standards save lives. What are you planning? A campaign. Before oral arguments, we flood the media with evidence. Show what we'll lose if the court strikes this down. Make it impossible for them to rule against us without looking like they're endorsing police misconduct. Senator Chen was quiet for a moment. That's playing politics with the judiciary. No, that's showing them the truth. The court doesn't exist in a vacuum. They'll see what the country sees, and the country needs to see what's working. Frances spent the next week assembling her team. Not just lawyers and politicians, officers, community leaders, victims' families, people whose lives had been changed by reform. She found Officer Martinez in Oakland. I need you to testify, tell your story, show the court what the Turner standards mean to good cops. Martinez hesitated. Colonel, the union will come after me. I'll be blacklisted. You'll be protected, and you won't be alone. 47 other officers are testifying too. This is bigger than any one of us. Will it make a difference? It has to. She found Robert Chen, the principal Kane had brutalized 3 years ago. Mr. Chen, I need you to speak. One more time. Tell them what happened. Tell them what's changed. Robert looked older, tired. Colonel, I've told my story 100 times. To reporters. To investigators. To Congress. What's one more time going to do? This time it's the Supreme Court. This time it determines whether what happened to you can keep happening, whether the reforms that came from your pain mean anything. He closed his eyes. I'll do it, but Colonel, this has to be the last time. I can't keep reliving that day forever. I know, I'm sorry, but we're almost there. One more fight, then we can rest. She assembled a coalition, the NAACP, the ACLU, police reform groups, civil rights organizations, even some police unions that had embraced the standards. They filed amicus briefs, organized rallies, launched social media campaigns. The hashtag became Justice Not Politics. Within 2 weeks it was trending worldwide, but the opposition was organizing too. The Fraternal Order of Police held a press conference. Their president was a man named Jack Donnelly, 30 years on the force, face like granite, voice like gravel. The Turner Standards are government overreach, he declared. They hamstring officers, make them afraid to act. Crime is up in cities that implemented these rules. Response times are slower. Officers are leaving the profession in record numbers. A reporter asked, but the data shows crime is actually down. The data is manipulated. Colonel Turner cherry-picks success stories while ignoring the disasters. She's put a target on every officer's back, made us second-class citizens, and now she wants the Supreme Court to rubber-stamp her vendetta. Frances watched the press conference from her office. Major Chen stood beside her. Ma'am, we should respond. No, let them talk. Let them show who they really are. She pulled up a file. Besides, I have something better than a press conference. The next day, Frances released a 40-page report. Comprehensive data from every department that had implemented the Turner Standards. Crime rates, use of force incidents, community trust surveys, officer retention numbers, all of it. The results were undeniable. Crime was down an average of 11% in compliant departments. Excessive force complaints down 42%. Officer injuries down 23%. Community satisfaction up 51%. And officer retention higher in reform departments than traditional ones. Officers want to work in departments with clear standards and strong leadership, Frances said in a video statement. They want backup from command when they do the right thing. They want to serve communities, not occupy them. The Turner Standards give them that framework. The data proves it works. The report went viral. Every major news outlet covered it. Donnelly tried to dispute it, but the numbers didn't lie. 2 weeks before oral arguments, Frances received a letter, no return address, handwritten. She opened it carefully. Her security detail watched. Colonel Turner, my name is Michael Caine. Derek Caine is my brother. I'm writing because I need you to know something. What Derek did was wrong, inexcusable. Our family knows that. But he wasn't born a bad cop. He was trained to be one, taught that aggression was strength, that compliance mattered more than rights, that the badge gave him power over people instead of responsibility to them. I'm a cop too. Been on the force in Denver for 8 years, and I've spent the last year trying to unlearn everything Derek learned. Trying to be the kind of officer your standards describe. It's hard. The culture fights back. But I'm doing it. Because I saw what my brother became. What the system enabled him to become. And I never want to be that. Thank you for your service, and thank you for trying to fix what's broken. We need it. Michael. Frances read the letter 3 times. Then she called Major Chen. Find Michael Caine, Denver PD. I want to talk to him. They spoke the next day. Michael sounded young, nervous. Colonel, I probably shouldn't have sent that letter. The union finds out I'm supporting you. Then don't tell them. But Michael, I need to ask you something. Would you be willing to testify, silence, about my brother? About being an officer who wants to do better? About seeing the system that created your brother and choosing differently? About what reform means to cops like you? They'll destroy me. Maybe. Or maybe you'll inspire 1,000 other officers who feel the same way, who want to serve with honor but don't know how to fight the culture. More silence. Then, I'll do it. For Derek, so his mistakes can mean something. Michael Caine testified during a rally outside the Supreme Court. 5,000 people attended, officers, citizens, families, all demanding the court uphold the Turner Standards. My brother made terrible choices, Michael said, voice shaking. But those choices were enabled by a system without accountability. The Turner Standards don't attack police. They protect us. They give us clear guidelines. They back us up when we do the right thing and hold us accountable when we don't. That's not government overreach. That's leadership. The crowd erupted in applause. Frances stood in the back, watching, Zoe beside her. Mom, that took guts. Yes, it did. Think it'll make a difference? I hope so. Oral arguments were scheduled for March 15th. Frances arrived at the Supreme Court in full dress uniform. The steps were packed, media everywhere, protesters on both sides. Signs reading, Support the Turner Standards, facing signs reading, Back the Blue. Inside the courtroom was silent, reverent. 9 justices, black robes, the weight of history pressing down. The government's lawyer went first. Methodical, precise, explaining federal authority, constitutional law, precedent. Then the union's lawyer, Marcus Hartley, the same attorney who'd defended Kane. He'd lost that case, but he was determined to win this one. Your Honors, this case is about limits, about whether the federal government can dictate how local police departments operate, can mandate training, can threaten funding, can insert military oversight into civilian law enforcement. He gestured broadly. Colonel Turner may have good intentions, but the road to tyranny is paved with good intentions. Today it's police reform, tomorrow it's gun control, next year it's free speech. Where does federal authority end? Justice Rodriguez leaned forward. Counselor, the federal government has always attached conditions to federal funding. Roads, schools, healthcare. Why is law enforcement different? Because law enforcement is the front line of public safety. These standards hamstring officers, make them hesitant, get them killed. Do you have evidence of that? Hartley pulled out his own report. 63 departments have reported increased response times. Officers are afraid to act decisively. Crime is rising in some jurisdictions. Some jurisdictions, Justice Rodriguez interrupted. What about the hundreds where crime has fallen, where community trust has improved, where officers report higher job satisfaction, cherry-picked data? Is it, or is your data cherry-picked to support your conclusion? The exchanges continued for 90 minutes. Francis sat in the gallery watching, reading the justices, trying to gauge which way they'd rule. Justice Chen, the swing vote, asked the final question. Counselor, if we strike down these standards, what happens to officers like Michael Kane, the ones who want to do better but work in departments without accountability? What happens to communities that have been brutalized by police misconduct? Hartley paused. Your Honor, those are difficult situations, but the solution isn't federal overreach. It's local reform, community engagement, each department finding its own path. They've had decades to find their own path. It hasn't worked. Why should we believe it will work now? Hartley had no answer. The court recessed. Decision pending. Could take months. Francis walked out into a media circus. Colonel Turner, how do you think it went? Do you think the court will uphold the standards? What happens if they don't? She stopped on the steps, looked at the cameras, at the crowd, at the country watching. I think the court will do what the court does. Review the law. Consider the evidence. Make a decision based on constitutional principles. She paused. But I also think the American people have spoken. They want accountability. They want justice. They want law enforcement that protects everyone equally. And regardless of what the court decides, that movement isn't stopping. She turned to leave. A reporter called out one more question. Colonel, do you regret activating Wolverine 6 starting all of this? Francis looked back. Not for a second. The wait was brutal. 6 weeks, then 8, then 12. Francis threw herself into work. Continued audits, continued training, continued highlighting success stories. But the uncertainty was exhausting. Everything hung in balance. Everything could collapse with one ruling. She was in a meeting with police chiefs from 6 states when Major Chen burst in. Colonel, the court just released their decision. Francis stood. And Chen handed her his tablet. She read the first paragraph, then read it again. 7-2, she said quietly. We won. The room erupted. Chiefs who'd fought her reforms were now cheering. Because they'd seen the results. They'd seen the success. And they knew what losing would have meant. Francis read the majority opinion. Written by Justice Rodriguez. The federal government has clear authority to set conditions on federal funding. The Turner Standards represent reasonable requirements for departments receiving taxpayer dollars. These standards do not hamstring police. They empower them. Give them tools to serve effectively and constitutionally. The data overwhelmingly supports their efficacy. Officer safety has improved. Crime has decreased. Community trust has increased. This court will not strike down successful reform because it makes some uncomfortable. Accountability is not tyranny, it is governance. Francis closed her eyes, felt tears threatening, held them back. Colonel, Chen asked quietly, you okay? Yeah, I'm just... She took a breath. Call everyone, the team, the officers who testified, the families. Tell them we won, tell them it's over. But it wasn't quite over. That night, Francis drove to Arlington, to Marcus's grave, sat beside it as the sun set. We did it, she said. 7-2. The court upheld everything, every standard, every reform. It's federal law now, permanent. Gate. The wind rustled through the trees. Evening birds called to each other. The world continued spinning. Derek Kane is still in prison. He'll serve every day of his sentence. Captain Mitchell is living somewhere in Montana under a different name. Rodriguez is in therapy trying to forgive himself. She paused. And me, I'm tired, Marcus. So tired. But it's good tired. The kind that comes from finishing something important. She pulled out her phone, showed the screen to the headstone like he could see it. Look at this. Officer Martinez in Oakland. She prevented 3 use-of-force incidents last month through de-escalation, saved lives, protected her community, did it all by the book. She scrolled. And this, Chicago PD, they implemented the standards last year. Excessive force complaints down 68%, community trust up 43%. They're a model now. Other departments are copying them. More scrolling, more success stories. It's working, Marcus. Not perfectly, not everywhere, but it's working. And it exists because Derek Kane made the worst decision of his life. Because he threw my Bronze Star on the ground. Because 14 minutes of his power became a catalyst for decades of change. She stood, brushed off her uniform. I'm going to take some leave. Spend time with Zoe. Maybe travel. Maybe just sleep for a week. She smiled. You'd tell me I've earned it, that I don't have to save everyone, that I've done enough. The wind picked up, warm, gentle. I love you, always will. And I'm going to keep living. Really living. Like I promised. She drove home, called Zoe. Mom, I saw the news. 7 to 2, 7 to 2. How do you feel? Frances thought about it. Grateful, exhausted, proud, sad that it took so much pain to get here, hopeful that the pain meant something. It meant everything, Mom. You changed the country. I started a conversation. A lot of people finished it. Don't do that. Don't minimize what you did. You stood up when most people would have stayed quiet. You fought when most people would have given up. You turned the worst day of your life into a movement that's going to protect people for generations. Zoe's voice caught. Dad would be so proud. I hope so. I know so. They talked for an hour, about nothing important, about everything important, about life beyond reform and trials and Supreme Court decisions. When Frances hung up, she felt something she hadn't felt in 2 years, ready to rest. But first, one more thing. She drove to Pinecrest, to the street now called Constitutional Accountability Boulevard, to the memorial marker. Someone had left flowers, fresh ones, white roses. A note attached, "Thank you for your courage. You changed my life. Officer J. Martinez, Oakland PD." Frances touched the marker, read the inscription again. Then she got back in her car and drove to the police department. Captain Brennan was still there, working late, like Frances knew she would be. Colonel Turner, come to gloat. Come to say thank you. This department has become the model. Other departments study what you've done here, how you've changed the culture. You've proven reform works. Brennan looked tired, but satisfied. It wasn't easy. I had to fire 32 officers, promote 15 new ones, completely overhaul training, change everything. She paused. But you were right. The officers who stayed, they're better, they're happier, and the community trusts us again. For the first time in decades, people wave at our patrol cars instead of looking away. That's what it was all about. I know. Took me a while to understand it, but I know. Brennan stood, extended her hand. Thank you, Colonel, for pushing us, for not backing down, for showing us what we could be. Frances shook it. Keep being the model. Other departments need to see it's possible. We will. See, Frances left the department and drove through Pinecrest, the neighborhood where it all started. Wealthy, tree-lined. The kind of place where a black woman in an expensive car shouldn't have been suspicious. Now it was different. She passed 2 patrol cars. Both officers waved. Respectful, professional, no aggression, no bias. Progress. 2 years after that Tuesday morning, Frances stood in front of the National Law Enforcement Memorial in Washington, D.C. They were dedicating a new section, officers who had died in the line of duty, heroes who'd given everything, but they were also adding something else. A new wall, for officers who'd been fired or prosecuted for misconduct. Not to shame them, to remember them, to ensure their mistakes weren't forgotten or repeated. Derek Kane's name was on it, badge number 2847, Pinecrest Police Department, convicted of civil rights violations, sentenced to 6 years federal prison. We remember the fallen, Frances said during her speech. We honor their sacrifice, but we also remember the failures. We acknowledge the officers who violated their oaths, who abused their power, who betrayed the communities they swore to protect. Not because we want to shame them, but because we refuse to forget, because learning from failure is how we improve. The crowd was silent. Officers, citizens, families, all listening. 2 years ago, I was illegally detained by an officer who saw my skin color before he saw my rank, who saw an expensive car and assumed crime, who threw my Bronze Star on the ground and mocked my service. She paused. That officer is in prison now. His career is over, his life destroyed, and I don't celebrate that. I don't take joy in his suffering, but I accept it as necessary, as accountability, as consequences. She looked at the memorial wall, at Kane's name, at the dozens of other names. These officers failed, but the system that enabled them failed first. The departments that protected them failed. The unions that defended them failed. The politicians who ignored complaints failed. We all failed. Her voice strengthened. But failure isn't fatal unless we refuse to learn from it. The Turner Standards exist because we learned, because we chose accountability over convenience, justice over comfort, and we're better for it. She stepped back. The memorial was unveiled, names etched in granite, permanent, undeniable. Frances stood there for a long time, thinking about Kane, about Marcus, about the 2 years between that Tuesday morning and this moment. Major Chen found her an hour later. "Colonel, you have a visitor." Frances turned. A young woman stood there, 23, 24, nervous. "Colonel Turner, I'm Sarah Kane, Derek's daughter." Frances went still. "I didn't know he had a daughter." "He doesn't talk about me. We're not close. Haven't been since I was 12. Sarah looked at the memorial wall, at her father's name. "I came because I needed to say something." "To you, personally?" "You don't owe me anything." "Yes, I do. I owe you an apology for what my father did, for what he put you through, for everything." "You're not responsible for his choices." "I know, but I'm responsible for mine, and I'm choosing to be better. I'm in law school now, Fordham. I want to be a civil rights attorney. I want to defend people like you, people who've been violated by officers like my father." Tears streamed down her face. "I want his mistake to mean something. I want to make something good come from something so terrible." Frances stepped forward, wrapped her arms around this young woman, this daughter of the man who'd tried to destroy her. "You already have," she whispered, "just by being here, by choosing differently, by refusing to defend the indefensible." They stood there for a long moment. Two people connected by trauma, choosing healing. When Sarah left, Frances sat on a bench facing the memorial. The sun was setting, casting long shadows. Her phone buzzed, text from Zoe. "Mom, I got the job ACLU, Civil Rights Division. I start in 2 weeks." Frances smiled, typed back, "Proud of you, always." Another text learned from the best. Frances put her phone away, looked at the memorial one last time. 2 years ago, she'd been a colonel running late for an inspection, a widow trying to honor her husband's memory, a mother hoping her daughter would make her proud. Then Derek Kane had pulled her over, and everything changed. The Turner Standards were law now. Permanent. 497 departments in full compliance. Another 200 working toward it. Officer-involved shootings down 38% nationally. Excessive force complaints down 52%. Community trust surveys showing the highest approval ratings for police in 40 years. It worked. The reform worked. But Frances knew the fight wasn't over, would never be over, because systems don't change overnight. Culture doesn't shift because of one law. Accountability is a practice, not a destination. There would be more Derek Kanes, more departments that resisted, more officers who thought the badge gave them power over people instead of responsibility to them. But now there were also tools to fight back, standards to enforce, consequences for violations, and a country that was finally paying attention. Frances stood, straightened her uniform. The Bronze Star caught the fading sunlight. She'd worn it every day since the trial. A reminder of what she'd almost lost, of what she'd fought to change, of why accountability mattered. Her phone rang. "General Morrison?" "Frances, I just wanted to call and congratulate you. The court decision, the memorial dedication, everything you've accomplished. It's remarkable." "Thank you, sir. I also wanted to let you know that you're being considered for promotion. Brigadier General, your leadership on this has been exemplary." Frances was quiet for a moment. 2 years ago, she'd have jumped at that opportunity. A star, general rank, the culmination of her career. Now, "Sir, I appreciate that, truly, but I think I'm done." "Done?" "I'm going to retire. End of the year. 27 years is enough. I've fought my fight, changed what I could change. Now it's time for someone else to carry it forward." Morrison was silent. Then, what will you do? Teach? Consult? Spend time with my daughter? Maybe write a book? Maybe just breathe for the first time in 2 years?" She smiled. "Live, sir. I'm going to live." "You've earned it. And Francis, thank you for your service, for your courage, for showing us all what accountability looks like." They hung up. Francis walked to her car, Marcus's car, the BMW that started everything. She drove through Washington, D.C., past the Pentagon, past the Capitol, past the Supreme Court where 7 justices had validated her fight. She drove to the street where she'd parked that Tuesday morning, the spot where Cain had pulled her over, where 14 minutes had changed everything. The street was quiet now. Evening settling in. Families coming home. Kids playing. Normal life. Francis sat in the car for a moment, hands on the wheel. The same position she'd been in 2 years ago. But different now. Everything different. She thought about Cain sitting in his prison cell, about Rodriguez trying to forgive himself, about Captain Mitchell hiding in Montana, about all the officers who'd changed because of what happened here. She thought about Michael Caine choosing differently than his brother, about Sarah Cain becoming a civil rights attorney, about Officer Martinez preventing violence through de-escalation. She thought about Zoe joining the ACLU, about the Turner Standards becoming law, about 497 departments proving reform works. And she thought about Marcus, about his sacrifice, about his belief that if not us if not now when we did it, she whispered to his memory, we changed the system, made it better, made your sacrifice mean something. The sun set completely, stars appeared, the universe vast and indifferent but somehow hopeful. Francis started the car, put it in drive, and moved forward, toward retirement, toward rest, toward a life beyond reform and trials and Supreme Court decisions, but also toward legacy, toward impact, toward the knowledge that she'd taken the worst moment of her life and transformed it into something that would protect people for generations. Derek Cain had meant to humiliate her, to assert power, to put her in her place. Instead, he'd ignited a revolution, and Francis Turner, she'd turned 14 minutes of injustice into a lifetime of change. That was victory. That was justice. That was the breakthrough she'd fought for, not just for herself, for everyone who'd been profiled, everyone who'd been violated, everyone who'd watched officers abuse power and felt helpless to stop it. Now they weren't helpless. Now they had standards, they had accountability, they had proof that change was possible. Francis drove home through streets made safer by the reforms she'd demanded, past departments held accountable by the standards she'd created, past officers who now thought twice before letting bias guide their actions. And when she finally pulled into her driveway, when she finally turned off the engine and sat in the quiet darkness, she felt something she'd been chasing for 2 years. Peace. The fight wasn't over, would never be completely over. But her part in it, that was done. She'd counted every second of those 14 minutes, made every single second count, and now finally she could rest. Francis Turner got out of the car, locked it, walked to her door. Behind her, Marcus's BMW sat in the driveway, a symbol of sacrifice, of love, of everything that had changed because one cop made the wrong choice and one colonel refused to stay silent. Tomorrow, other officers would make other choices, some good, some bad. The work would continue. But tonight Francis Turner was just a woman going home, a mother, a veteran, a citizen, someone who'd seen injustice and chosen to fight it, who'd taken her power and used it to protect those without it, who'd turned trauma into transformation. That was her story. Not a story of revenge, not a story of destruction, a story of courage, of discipline, of justice. And in 497 police departments across America, in thousands of traffic stops that ended peacefully in millions of interactions where officers chose de-escalation over aggression, her story lived on. Not as Colonel Turner, just as someone who'd refused to accept that this was how things had to be, someone who'd demanded better and got it,